Students going in.
We have an extra
Annabelle.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
There's no one coming.
She's a fine.
Another extra.
In the morning.
But do we?
She's dedicated. Hey, study abroad is expensive.
Yeah.
Never hear that. Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. I know everyone's still finding seats. I think we should have enough. And since it is the hour of 6:30, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Isla Vista Community Services District Board of Directors. I'd like to announce that the meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Director Brent,
Here.
Director Sipos,
Here.
Director Plot,
Here.
Director Hobart,
Here.
Director Carmichael,
Here.
Director Toppin.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Aniscoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now I'm going to open the public comment period. This is not for the item on our agenda. This is for any matters that are not on tonight's agenda. So something that's not related to the proposed ordinance. If anyone has general public comment to me, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Esteban, please go ahead.
Yes. Unrelated, carries a bit of controversy with it. It's already been the next fall since last fall. From the state, all counties have received money for warming centers for the winter time. And there was a steering committee set up to get those going. Maya was part of that committee. You know, it rained this November and on the people who live outside. And my concern is that there's a lot of other priorities going on in Isla Vista that the CSD has been vigorously working on. But when it comes to having a warming center ready in the fall for the people who live outside, you have truly been very negligent. You have received funding from the state last fall, this fall, and I don't know what's been happening to that money. So I am personally interested in some kind of a disclosure or accounting of what's happening with that funding for warming centers for people who live outside. So I just want to make the board aware of those concerns so that it's not a surprise later when I continue to inquire.
Thank you for your comment. Well, we're not allowed to respond to public comment. Let's talk offline because I think there's more to the story. Any other public comments on matters that are not on today's agenda? Any online? Okay, we're going to close the public comment period and we're going to move to the proposed Santa Barbara County Outdoor Festival Ordinance Amendment. I think that's what everyone is here for. So one item on our agenda. I want to give an overview of what the process is going to be. I'm going to invite Lieutenant Schmidt of the Sheriff's Office to give a presentation. I think he has a PowerPoint, which we are getting ready to queue up. After that, if there's anything that our staff wants to add to the presentation, I'll give you the opportunity. We will allow questions from our board to the presenter, to Mr. Schmidt, and then from there, we will open up public comment. There will be 3 minutes limited per speaker. And I ask that everyone keep their comments directed to the board and keep them respectful of each other and of our community. Upon the conclusion of public comment, there will be a board discussion. I'll go down the line and ask members for their thoughts as we deliberate, and then we'll proceed to a vote. Then as ground rules, we don't allow clapping, but if you agree with something that you hear, feel free to do ASL applause. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Lieutenant Schmidt. Thank you very much for being here, and please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. Is there a way I could scroll through the slides?
I'll do.
Do it. All right. Let's see, instruction point or something. All right, great crowd today. I'm going to try and get through this without coughing, so if I could pause and drink water, please bear with me. Okay, good evening, members of the IVCSD board. As you know, my name is Joe Schmidt, and I'm the lieutenant of the Isla Vista Foot Patrol. I'm here before all of you as a SBCC and UCSB alumni, former resident of Isla Vista, and 21-year veteran of the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office. I'm proud to serve the Isla Vista community as a Chief of Police Services. Next slide. I'm here to discuss an amendment to the Deltopia Festival Ordinance. For 16 years, the County of Santa Barbara has been grappling with several challenges associated with this unsanctioned event. An event that's been dangerous to our community, disastrous to the environment, and harmful to our neighbors. Next slide. The Outdoor Festival Ordinance currently prohibits amplified music during Deltopia weekend from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the first week of UCSB spring quarter. Next. This is a proposal to increase the ban of amplified music audible from the property line to 72 hours, from Friday at midnight to Sunday at 11:59 p.m. on the first week of UCSB spring quarter, and also to expand the enforcement of the outdoor festival and nuisance party ordinances to housing northwest of Isla Vista. Next. The expansion of the festival and nuisance party ordinances would extend to the cove located on the northwest corner of Stork Road in El Colegio, just outside Isla Vista. The reason for this is increased calls for service and disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace calls in this neighborhood. Next. Our goals of this ordinance are to protect the Isla Vista, UCSB, and neighboring communities, to prevent future tragedy, change the harmful culture of Deltopia, deter out-of-town crowds to keep it local, and collaborate with the IV Community Services District, IV Parks, and UCSB to facilitate an alternative event that's safe and sanctioned to continue the celebratory spirit for the student community. This is not about control or increasing police presence. In fact, the goal is to reduce the police presence by facilitating a sanctioned event. Change is hard, but it forces us to adapt with the purpose of improving safety and quality of life for all. Next. Okay, outreach. This is a list of stakeholders I've met with to discuss the ordinance. Kind of hard to read from where you're all sitting, but there's a lot of involved parties there. A lot of groups from UC Santa Barbara, to include Programming Board, Associate Students, the Panhellenic Council, Interfraternal Council, Vice Chancellors of Student Affairs and Admin Services, UCSB Housing, UCSB Police, SBCC Office of Communications, and then numerous stakeholders within Isla Vista. So this is a list, and there's a narrative circulating that this ordinance was pushed without community input, and that is not the case. For several months, the Sheriff's Office has met with numerous stakeholders from the Isla Vista, UCSB, and neighboring communities to discuss the proposal and solicit input for other options. Unfortunately, a proposed alternative was to seal off Isla Vista to prevent out-of-towners from entering by using roadblocks and checkpoints. Unfortunately, these measures are not logistically possible, and they're unconstitutional. Next. I will now discuss the history of Deltopia, which led us to this point. Next. All right, there's a picture of Flotopia. So Flotopia, 2009. In 2009, 12,000 people converged onto Isla Vista beaches. It became an environmental and human disaster. 2 people fell off the cliff. There were multiple injuries and multiple near drownings requiring water rescues, and thousands of pounds of trash left on the beach, and much of it washed into the Pacific Ocean.
And I'm gonna just ask to pause real quickly because we've had some additional people that have joined us. Can we try to make an effort to find some chairs for folks? I know that it's not ideal given the close quarters, but I want to make sure everyone has a chance to enjoy the presentation.
People can sit. There's
Yeah, there's a chair there, one here, and three over here.
So come forward. We've got more space.
move over.
Yeah.
There's 3 in the back here.
Okay.
All right.
One of you. Okay, thanks everyone for bearing with us. Please continue.
All right, for those who just joined us, I'm going into the history of Deltopia. I talked about Flotopia 2009, and now, next slide, please. After the environmental and human disaster we had in 2009, to protect our fragile environment that's so important to the Isla Vista and UCSB communities, the beaches were closed. Thus, the party was moved to Del Playa and Deltopia was born. But unfortunately, new problems emerged, jeopardizing health and safety. Next. In 2013, a balcony at 6643 Del Playa collapsed, causing multiple injuries and sending 5 patients to the hospital. Injuries included a fractured pelvis, fractured legs, and nerve damage. Next. Also in 2013, Cal Poly student Giselle Ayala was at a party at 6709 Del Playa, located on the ocean side. The residents who threw the party described it as out of control, with people jumping fences to get in. Chaos erupted inside the house and several tables were destroyed. Giselle was separated from her friends and never seen again alive. The next morning on April 6th, Giselle's body was found by a jogger near Campus Point. The investigation revealed that Giselle likely fell off the cliff while trying to escape the out of control party. Next. During Deltopia 2014, a riot started after a police officer was knocked unconscious with a glass bottle while trying to break up a fight. Law enforcement who responded to rescue the downed officer were met by a violent mob who began throwing rocks and bottles. I know because I was one of the responding deputies that night. This led to a riot that lasted several hours. Multiple people were injured and extensive property damage occurred. Out-of-towners contributed to much of the chaos and destruction. And in the aftermath, the entire Sheriff's Detective Bureau prioritized arresting instigators. And arrests were made from San Diego to Lake Tahoe, and this temporarily suspended other investigations in the county. Next. In 2023, we saw a resurgence of out-of-town crowds enter Isla Vista and converge onto Del Playa for Deltopia. In this image, an out-of-town DJ holds an unpermitted concert at 6653 Del Playa. Streets and balconies were overcrowded with people, limiting the accessibility of first responders. Next. And sadly, we had another death during Deltopia 2023. Jude Carinale was found unresponsive in a bathroom in Isla Vista. Medics responded and were successful in getting a brief pulse, but Jude lapsed into cardiac arrest while being transported to the hospital. Jude died from a fentanyl overdose. And 2 additional patients were found with Jude and also transported to the hospital for emergency medical treatment. Next. During Deltopia 2024, we ran out of ambulances in the morning due to multiple alcohol overdoses. Several patients with acute alcohol poisoning, many found unconscious and covered in their own vomit, had to be carried to the nearest sheriff vehicles and transported to a medical tech. They were carried to vehicles because there was no ambulances available to transport them. They had to be transported in sheriff vehicles. Not the ideal way to transport someone in medical distress. Next. And in Deltopia 2025, the number of arrests, citations, and medical calls increased. This is a picture of the parking lot at the Isla Vista Foot Patrol. It turns into a mobile booking center because we have such a high volume of arrestees in a short amount of time that we need this space. It acts as a mobile temporary jail. Next. This is an example of a rescue task force. So we need to put rescue task force teams together. A rescue task force is a team of firefighters and police that have to pair up to go extract patients where ambulances can't go. The reason why police have to go with the fire department is because numerous times when we're trying to give medical aid to somebody, their friends who are also oftentimes intoxicated think they know how to provide better care, and they ultimately attack the firefighters. I've been attacked at least twice trying to give medical aid to people during Deltopia. So that's why police have to pair with fire. You'll hear the RTF or Rescue Task Force term quite a bit. Next. At the end of Deltopia 2025, we had 485 people cited, 84 people physically arrested and booked into jail, 1 firearm seized from an out-of-towner, 122 medical calls to EMS, 57 patients treated at a triage tent, 25 patients transported to the hospital, and that number actually overwhelmed the Goleta Valley Cottage Hospital. Patients had to be reallocated to Santa Barbara Cottage, and it created a major impact for the rest of the South County because there were so many patients, mostly from acute alcohol intoxication. And at the end, we required 7 ambulances that were assigned to this mass casualty incident. Next. Deltopia continues to grow and negatively affect our neighboring communities, so it doesn't just affect Isla Vista. Next. In the city of Goleta, out-of-towners park, tailgate, trash neighborhoods, and even urinate and defecate in public, primarily surrounding Gersh Park, Dos Pueblos High School, and Western Goleta residential areas. I've even received reports from the city of Goleta that Deltopia attendees will urinate and defecate in front of kids playing sports at Gersh Park. Goleta has spent up to $30,000 annually cleaning up after Deltopia, and this is unbudgeted for Goleta. Next. The issues also extend to the Santa Barbara Airport. Out-of-towners park in long-term and short-term parking and throw trash and glass bottles throughout the airport property to include the tarmac. This causes flight delays until airport police can clean up the trash, which includes broken glass from the tarmac to allow planes to safely proceed to the runway. This has occurred since 2010. Next. Let's take a look at medical calls. On a non-Deltopia Saturday, in this case, March 8th of 2025, there were 43 medical calls in Isla Vista. The call volume and location is represented in these heat maps, those little balloons that you see in green. Next. On April 5th, 2025, which was Saturday of Deltopia this year, there were 122 medical calls in Isla Vista during this Deltopia Saturday. This is a 35% increase from a non-Deltopia weekend. For comparison, there were a total of 47 medical calls in all other areas of South Santa Barbara County. Next. Actually, Jonathan, can you go back to the next previous slide, please? So you can see the heat map, right? As the increased calls, the heat gets brighter. And that's Isla Vista, that stretch of orange and yellow. That's the high concentration of medical calls that are just in Isla Vista. Okay, next. Here's a look at medical calls in Santa Barbara County represented in this heat map. Note the concentration of medical calls in Isla Vista is much higher than anywhere else in Santa Barbara County. Next. Now I'll talk about Deltopia's cost to taxpayers. Next. All right, this is just a 3-year snapshot. So since 2023, the Sheriff's Office and Fire Department have spent almost $1.5 million in overtime alone on Deltopia. That's just overtime. This does not include regular time for personnel assigned to Deltopia or cost for emergency medical personnel. Next. We saw a 58% increase in sheriff overtime from 2024 to 2025, and we expect this number to continue to rise if Deltopia remains in its current form. Our staffing levels need to be commensurate with the surging crowds, so we have enough resources to maintain order, prevent chaos, and get patients medical treatment. Next. And looking at Deltopia since 2010 to this year, sheriff's overtime expenditures during this 15-year period exceed $1.1 million. That's just overtime. Next. Okay, Deltopia mitigation. That's a picture, kind of hard to see, but that's our medical triage tent. And that's in UCSB lot. That's immediately west of the Isla Vista Foot Patrol. So you have a medical tent, and then just east of that is our mobile booking facility. So Deltopia mitigation. For 16 years, the county has taken several incremental steps to mitigate Deltopia's harm and large out-of-town crowds. We've done several things to include closing the beaches, sent messaging to deter out-of-town crowds from coming to Isla Vista, made multiple ordinance revisions to include applying the outdoor festival ordinance to Deltopia, which is currently 6 p.m. to 7 a.m., eliminating paid parties, restricting parties to no more than 250 people, modifying the nuisance party ordinance to enforce people on roofs and throwing objects, among other violations. We also suspended the restorative justice program and increased law enforcement, fire, and EMS staffing. Despite these efforts, the crowds are growing. Next. And next. So in summary, looking at the origination of this event in 2009 was Flowtopia to what it is today, 2025. We must remember, Isla Vista is not just a student town, but a community of students, teachers, long-term residents, and families with young children who need to coexist in a safe, respectful, and healthy manner. Isla Vista has an elementary school where young residents from 4 to 12 years old attend school. They deserve to live in an area free of dangerous crowds and harmful behavior. And let me be clear, we are not trying to stop the party culture. This ordinance is a mechanism to deter out-of-town crowds and out-of-control parties. Limiting out-of-town crowds will reduce the need for a heavy police presence. It worked for Halloween, and it could work for Deltopia. Now, full transparency, this has been confusing in the past. My fault for not explaining it better, but if the ordinance does pass and it goes to the Board of Supervisors on January 13th, because we don't know, and this is a short period of time between a law changing and next Deltopia, which is in April, is we're going to have the same police, EMS, and fire presence, because we don't know if that's going to be enough time to deter out-of-town crowds. But the goal is to eventually scale that presence back as the messaging changes, just like we saw in Halloween. We're just hoping to shorten that time a lot more than it took to shorten the Halloween presence of out-of-towners. So I want to be clear, residents can still have parties and celebrate the community. And what we're proposing and encouraging is a sanctioned event with permitted music and all safety measures in place as a solution to maintain the celebratory spirit while reducing the history of harm. After 16 years and numerous measures to manage Deltopia, we've seen too much tragedy to not do something about it. Now, you probably can't see, for those of you in the back, I'm just going to recap real quick some of the things we've seen in the last 16 years. 2 deaths, 1 riot, 1 balcony collapse, a surge of medical emergencies, increased sexual violence, increased violent assaults. There's even in 2023 a movie called Deltopia that was released that sensationalized the violence and lawlessness of the 2014 Deltopia. We've also had overloaded cell phone towers, harmful environmental impact, negative impact of the city of Goleta and the Santa Barbara airport, a drain in public safety resources, and as I mentioned before, a significant cost to taxpayers. Next. Okay, it's hard to see with the small screen, but although not Deltopia related, this cliff fall incident on November 15th, 2025 is a sobering reminder of the dangers associated with alcohol consumption and the Isla Vista Bluffs, a significant concern during Deltopia. These are body camera screenshots of the law enforcement response. Those are all deputy sheriffs on the bottom right, deputy sheriffs and UCSB police officers that were first on scene of this cliff fall victim. This happened just 2 weeks ago. Thankfully, this patient survived the fall. However, I want you to notice, if you can, the rising tide in both images. This patient fell off the cliff at high tide. And when the deputies arrived to the patient, he was having waves crash upon him, and he was essentially unconscious. So it brings the point home that although some falls are all survivable, an incapacitated patient submerged in rising tide can quickly become a drowning victim. This illustrates the importance of public safety's immediate response, a response that can be delayed by large crowds. Deputies and UCPD officers secured this patient within 2 minutes of the call for service. The patient was stabilized, transported to the hospital and was released from the hospital several days later. Next. It's an important quote. In my 21 years with the Sheriff's Office, I've investigated multiple deaths in Isla Vista. 8 of these deaths were college students. 6 died from homicide. 1 died from polysubstance abuse. And 1 died from a cliff fall. The cliff fall death I investigated was Giselle Ayala, who died during Deltopia 2013. As I previously mentioned, Giselle wasn't found until the morning after she fell to her death, likely due to the chaos and crowds that resulted from the out-of-control Deltopia party she attended. In closing, this ordinance is not about government control. It's about protecting the people and the environment and changing the harmful culture of Deltopia to prevent future tragedy. Members of the IVCSD, this is a call to action, and I'm seeking IVCSD's support in endorsing this ordinance. Let's be proactive and affect change now, because those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Lieutenant Schmidt. Is there anything from our staff that we would like to add?
Yes, something I'll just clarify is we've been working on planning an alternative event or sanctioned festival during Deltopia since 2018. So that's been a project we've been working on for a very long time. And we haven't been able to get it very far with our bigger vision. We've been successful at planning smaller festivals to help divert and provide an outlet for people in the park and help people eat and drink water to reduce medical calls. But we are equipped to go bigger. We just have been blocked also in the past by the county from being able to plan a bigger event. So we are hoping to not have those blocks this year.
Thank you for that. Okay, questions from the board for Lieutenant Schmidt or for our staff? And I'm going to go to the board first. There will be opportunity for public comment shortly.
I have a question. I remember in the past at a previous working meeting, I asked about whether or not warnings would be guaranteed for noise ordinance violators. And at that point in time, you said that they would not be, you said that they would not be guaranteed. And my question is, has your position on that changed at this time?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Director Top.
Thank you for your presentation, and I certainly want to say that we all should also share your concern about having a safe event. We have been very interested in having our own event. I'm not so clear from the language of the ordinance how that enables us to get a permit to waive the noise restrictions for our own event. Could you tell me how that would work? Because it references if you're getting a permit for some other county activity or some activity that's otherwise described in county ordinance. And so I don't know what that other activity would be that we would be getting a permit for.
Great question, and it's one that I was very, it was very important to me to clear that up. So there's a line in the current ordinance. Again, the only thing that we're proposing change is increasing the time frame of 72 hours and including the code, which is a neighborhood outside of Isla Vista. That's it. There's current language in the ordinance that reads, events permitted under other sections of the county code are exempt from this ordinance. In conferring with county council and with the CEO's office, the county CEO's office, who provides permits for outdoor festivals, that line is allows the ability to be exempt from that section, but it does require a permit. So I actually have a meeting with the CEO's office and county council this week, tentatively, to clarify what needs to be done to get the permit. I know there were some current concerns that if the festival was going to be over 5,000 people, it would have to go to the Board of Supervisors for approval. I believe that's accurate, but there's nothing to stop the way the ordinance is written currently of getting a permitted event to happen to be exempt from the festival ordinance during Deltopia.
Because we've never thought that in the past.
No.
You wouldn't have needed to.
Yeah, because it was before 6.
Right. I mean, we just conformed to it. So I would want to feel confident that there would actually be a process and that we could actually successfully go through that process.
Absolutely, I agree. And I'm forward members of the board, some of the conversations I've had with the CEO's office about this, And I even mentioned there's talk about having a 21 and over beer garden. And the response from the CEO's office was, I don't see any reason why they can't, but the person who normally issues the permits is on leave. So I'm gonna get together with them, the CEO's office and county council to make sure we have that mechanism in place.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Hobart.
Yeah, there were two things that I wanted to address. You said that it worked for Halloween and it can work for Deltopia, but one of the things that we had discussed previously was how the ordinance that was put in place for Halloween in 1993 wasn't actually effective until 2014. So what is your perspective on why you think that this ordinance would work for Deltopia, considering that history?
Well, I think it also, that brings up the point of there's no time like the present. This is the time to start. But I also think that our partnerships are a lot stronger now than they were before, and we can get ahead of the messaging. I don't think that I wasn't here in 93. I moved here in 96, and Halloween seemed to be a lot more mellow then, but I do know the grand scheme of things, it did take a while for Halloween to change. It's just going to take more effective teamwork and messaging to let people outside of this community know that this is not a fun place to be for Deltopia. Is it going to take time? Absolutely. It's not going to be an overnight. I don't want to market this as an overnight solution. It's not going to be an overnight solution. It's going to take time. It's going to take UCSB, CST, parks, the sheriff's office, all working together to achieve that goal.
Yeah, and a vote.
Director Sipos, go ahead.
Hi. Okay, I was just wondering, how would you guys approach like things like pre-games and like private, quiet, like legal, but like inside parties if this were to go through?
Totally acceptable. This is purely a prohibition on amplified music, which means that we can't be able to hear amplified music from the right of way, so the public right of way, which means the property line. But if people want to have a silent disco or they want to pregame and just have fun in their house, as long as there's no amplified music, that is not against this ordinance.
I just had a follow-up question based on some of the conversations that we've had offline and kind of picking up what Director Topliff was mentioning. Can you explain where you're at in the process? So is this going to the Board of Supervisors for a vote? Is it my understanding in January?
Yes, it was docketed last week.
Okay.
The set hearing is December 9th. That's not a significant hearing that's open. That's where I'm going to present. But on January 13th in Santa Barbara, time to be determined, I will give this exact same presentation to the Board of Supervisors.
So if based on this meeting today, there may be additional language that might be requested with regards to putting in place a statutory enablement for us to do an organized festival outside of this more discretionary process where we have to go to the Board of Supervisors for a hearing. What form would that take? Could we do that through this vehicle? Because this is clearly a vehicle that's moving.
Yeah, it is. This ordinance really can't be changed. And the reason why it was submitted the way it is because I have concurrence from County Council that the way it's written, it would still allow a permit. It's very clear in the section that events permitted under other sections of the county are exempt from the ordinance. County Council didn't feel there was a need to add anything additional or muddy the waters. It's very clear that if you get a permit, you can be exempt from the festival to include if it changes to a 72-hour ban. So, and what that line was meant for was that if somebody wanted to have an outdoor festival outside of that time frame, so it's currently 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. Let's say someone wanted to have a concert or a wedding at 8 p.m. They would file for this permit and then they'd be allowed to have their quote unquote outdoor festival. It's the same process if this passes for the spring festival. But is there another way to do it between now and the next Deltopia? There probably is if it comes up. I don't see, as it stands right now, between the comments from the CEO's office and County Council, there's no need. The permit mechanism is already in place.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Oh, we do. Go ahead, Director Hobart.
Yeah, I just wanted to address something that we had discussed previously in the working group. When we had talked about pre-games and things like that being hosted, you had talked about the spirit of the law versus the written law, and explained that while it's not your intention to over police parties, that you can't guarantee what the 300 other police officers would be doing on that day. Is there anything that you can clarify with that on what's allowed or not allowed and how police are going to respond?
Sure. I think the analogy I used was somebody listening to a loud iPhone speaker while they're making breakfast in the morning. You know, can we hear that from the property line? Sure. Is that something we're gonna write a ticket for? Can we? Yes. Are we going to? Probably not. But where that line is, now are we gonna allow a group of people in a front yard to have a Bluetooth speaker playing? Is that gonna be ticketed? Probably. I can't give you a black and white, here's the line where we're gonna absolutely write tickets, and this is where we're not. But the intention of this proposal is to eliminate these out-of-town parties from taking over the streets, balconies, and driveways, especially on Del Playa. That's the spirit of the law. But I'm not gonna say that somebody is not gonna get a ticket because they have 3 people in the front yard and they're playing music. It's still possible. So I'm not gonna say that's not gonna happen, but it's really, the intention is to prevent these large parties from happening that draw so many people in and become harmful.
So just to clarify, there aren't any assurances about what police may decide to enforce or not enforce.
No, when we have our briefing where we go over the statute, this is the purpose of this ordinance. And they make their own decisions. They use their own discretion, whether they cite or they don't cite. I can't say don't cite for 3 people unless in a front yard with a Bluetooth speaker. They're gonna make their own decision.
Is there any, in that briefing that you give, is there any context about Isla Vista as a community? I know there's a lot of officers that come from out of town, so that's one of the concerns I've heard, is that having out of town officers come in and forcing on our community, they might not understand what the culture is here. Is there anything that you guys do to try to make an effort to give them more information?
Good question. There's been times when we've given an overview. I mean, it's really changed over the last, doing this for 21 years, and between Halloween and Deltopia. Sometimes it's brought up, sometimes it's not. I know that when I provide the briefing this year or next year for Deltopia, I'm actually going to go over a history of Isla Vista so people have more context.
And sorry, one more question. Are you planning on going over any concerns that have been raised last year about the police presence? I know that there was a lot of community complaints about over policing and about the response of police using the horses and things for arrests, all of those kinds of things that we went over in our last meeting about Deltopia. Are you going to be addressing any of those things in this next Deltopia? Are you going to be trying to resolve any of those concerns, or what is your purpose for that?
Yes, to the best of my ability. Matter of fact, you brought something up that we're going to implement next year. And I know one of the concerns was that when females are being arrested, and a lot of times they're wearing very little clothing, bikinis, they're being arrested and transported in jail vans to our booking facility. And once they arrived at the booking facility, they were given a gray t-shirt. There was a picture in the presentation about that. Your suggestion, which was outstanding, was please have those t-shirts in the van, so as soon as they're arrested, the t-shirts go on the females. That's going to be implemented next year. So certain things that have come up, the horses, they will be back next year. It's not because we want them to intimidate people. The horses are an effective crowd management tool. They have a higher view, and they are effective for making arrests during the people who are resisting, because we can actually form a perimeter, and it's just a barrier, that's all. So if we have another 25, 30,000 people come, the horses will be used. The goal over time is to scale back the presence to include the out-of-town law enforcement, the mounted unit, and then most of the deputies that come down here. That's the end game here, is to eliminate all that altogether. And as for comparison, I can tell you Halloween, which used to have up to 500 police in Isla Vista, this year we had 19. And they were all local law enforcement. I worked both weekends, the weekend before and the weekend of, and we did it with 19 cops and 4 custody deputies and a bunch of firefighter and paramedics. We were busy, but it was manageable. That's the goal.
I actually have one more question. So you talked about not wanting it to be about control or increasing police presence, and we also went over those arrests and citations facts that we saw. My question is, from what I've seen with the data of Halloween and Deltopia, increasing police presence and increasing arrests and citations is not impacting medical calls. It's not impacting the impact on our public health and the issues with hospitals. So I just kind of want to understand the logic of keeping this high police presence and trying to kind of police Deltopia as a whole and make it illegal, and reducing that burden. So we talked a lot about the burden on the hospitals. So since those statistics don't reflect that policing is helping with the hospitals, like what do you think that's gonna impact?
Well, are you saying that the high amount of arrests and citations doesn't correlate to less
Yes.
hospital transports? Okay, if we take, I think the hospital transports are gonna be the same no matter what. Even if people are so intoxicated that they're a candidate to go to the hospital, that's no longer a police problem. So I think we're talking about two separate issues. When we have 25 to 30,000 people and 320 law enforcement, that is 320 law enforcement that can now be proactive and seek out violations, which is what they're told to do. Be proactive, and if people are too drunk to care for themselves, arrest them. They have open containers, give them tickets. I think the medical issue is a whole separate issue. I think that needs to be addressed. That's not a law enforcement problem. That's more of a community problem. And if anything, if we still have large crowds, like if this festival turns into what we're looking for it to turn into, yes, we'll scale down the police presence, but maybe we need to maintain the same fire and EMS levels.
Director Sebos, you have your hand up.
Yeah, okay. This might just be me being misinformed, but what is the difference between the consequences of getting arrested or cited during like when Deltopia used to happen, or actually during the I can't think of the word. What is it called? During the ordinance. Does that make sense?
The festival ordinance
Oh.
period.
Yeah.
There's no difference. The only difference is we suspend restorative justice. So some tickets that are candidates for the restorative justice program, and again, that's also deputy discretion. That program's suspended, and so every ticket would go down to either traffic court or the DA's office. That whole process is not changed during Deltopia. That's the same 365.
And I just have one more question, which is you mentioned in private conversation what you said tonight, which is that it's your intention to reduce law enforcement presence.
Correct.
When do you foresee that happening, and by how much?
It'd be scalable. As the crowds are reduced, I mean, if we see 15,000 people next year, then we're gonna tailor our staffing the following year to that $15,000 person crowd. It's gonna be scaled to the crowd. Always be commensurate with the crowds. And like we've seen with Halloween, we had 19 deputies with maybe 5,000 people out on Del Playa. That was an effective staffing model. We just don't know. And what a big concern I've been hearing from everybody in the community is, well, if you pass this ordinance, people are still going to come. They're not going to be prepared with enough resources. No, that's not the case. We are going to be prepared with enough resources. And if all of a sudden Deltopia 2026 happens and there's way less people, then a bunch of those cops are going to be sent home. So that staffing can even be changed on the spot. But we do need to be prepared because we just don't know what the response is going to be. We thought we saw, and I'm taking it from evidence-based practice, from history as a lesson. Okay, we thought we solved the problem in 2009 when we shut the beaches down. We didn't. The problem moved to Del Playa. And like in 2009 and in 2014, we were grossly understaffed and a lot of bad things happened. A lot of people were hurt. People died. That's not okay. And we have a responsibility between the fire department and public health to have resources to protect people, even if it being unsanctioned. So until the crowds start reducing, we're going to have the same presence. But as they do reduce, the presence will be reduced as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we've asked enough questions. Thank you for answering our questions today. I'm going to open up public comment. So for those that are interested in making comment, please raise your hand and I'm going to invite you to come up somewhere in this area. We don't have a podium, but imagine that there's a podium and deliver your comment. I'm going to limit comments to 3. So I saw the first hand over here, and if folks want to continue on and kind of make a line behind him, but sir, feel free to get us started.
Good evening. 2 questions. representing the Ivy Business Association, is this ordinance going to be applicable just for Deltopia or other similar festivals or throughout the year? And how does it impact businesses that has audible music playing that can be heard even under normal circumstances on the radio? And secondly, in the distance past, I've been here since '98. If I remember, we could cordon off roads, but we had to apply for a special permit for that special event. So if you could answer those two questions, and I'll be fast and into a presentation about those two questions.
Okay, your first question was,
Okay, is the noise ordinance applicable throughout
yes,
permanently, even for businesses,
yes,
even when it's not any festive season?
correct. It's just Deltopia too, no other time of the year except for Halloween, which is gonna remain at 6 PM to 7 AM.
So you say just Deltopia, but you mean it's there throughout the year? Sorry,
Okay,
clarify.
let me try and rephrase. Yes, it applies to all residential and commercial property, which includes businesses. So Woodstocks, they play music all the time. During the festival ordinance, they cannot play music. During Deltopia, if this ordinance passes, it would start at midnight on Friday and end at 11:59 PM on the Sunday of Deltopia. That would be the only weekend in the entire year where that 72-hour ban would apply. The only other time would be the 8 days surrounding Halloween, where the festival ordinance is 6 PM to 7 AM, which also businesses cannot have music audible on the street.
So you have many restaurants that has this lively atmosphere even during those events. And those, if you're walking past, you would hear the music. So that would not be, that would be construed a violation, right?
Technically, yes.
And the second question is the closure of the roads in the past. Like I said, I know we used to obtain, although you say it is not legal to have road closures, but if you could clarify even later on that road closures are legal if you obtain a permit well in advance to close the road for that.
I would never seek a permit for that, and here's why. I'll be quick. We're gonna now have checkpoints on the 3 routes of ingress and egress to Isla Vista: Stork Road, Los Caneros, and Ocean Road. How are we gonna prove people live in Isla Vista when most of the students in this community, their driver's license has an address that's not Isla Vista, it's where they grew up?
I could answer that. So that's part of my presentation I did with the Chancellor, Christian Jeschler, Dennis Asenius. I was asked this question, and after mulling it for some time, if we came up with a card system, an electronic card system on people's phones that showed where you stayed. Now remember, take big landlords like St. George. Everyone has leases, but we could come up with something on your phone that shows your picture and it's like an electronic ID to say you live in Ivy. And it expires after your duration of stay or lease or study. And in that way, you could prevent outsiders. And of course, what if I don't live, I'm not a student here, I live in Santa Barbara. This is still part of my community. I do want to come. When do we let Santa Barbarans in for UCSB? That is a harder one, but it's something we can think about because it'll be like a tier level. UCSB students and Ivy residents is first priority. We don't, well, I don't want to go into my presentation, but to answer your question, these things can be done. And it has been done in overseas in a different country where I got it, and it actually worked fine. And those times they carried hardcore cards. You have to present it. But today we all have cell phones, and that's possible.
Thank
you. Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Yeah, I'll try to keep track of time. I know I only have 3 minutes. So, I remember my when I was a senior in high school. That was 1993, and I was here that year. And you know, from the standpoint of a young person at the time, I thought that year was great, and it was a lot of fun. And I know that the older folks didn't like the chaos, but we loved it because we were young people who were amused by that kind of stuff. And then that summer, I graduated from high school, and I had gotten into UCSB my freshman year, and it was now 1994. And it wasn't the same. A lot changed. That was the year when the crackdown happened. It was my freshman year at UCSB. I just graduated from high school, and since then, the party scene was like this. It wasn't the same ever since these crackdowns happened. It seems like they have created a lot of conflict between the students and not just police, but just authority in general, the university, administration, etc. So I also remember 2009. I was here for Flowtopia, and also in 2008, and it was a great event on the beach. I studied environmental science, and I had to look down and think deeply. The party scene versus the environment. So UCSB is known for both, and the Santa Barbara community is known for both valuing its environment, and UCSB and the Isla Vista community for being a party school. And now you have these two things at odds with each other. If you want to be proud of being the #1 party school in the nation, maybe the party scene trumps the environment. Or maybe not. Who knows? Who knows? But
Swan, that is your time.
my time is okay. Do I have a little bit left?
Sorry.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Gotta
All
run a
right.
tight ship today and be fair. Okay.
Good evening, my name is Carmen and I'm a longtime resident. My presentation will be short. I just want to discuss wants versus needs. It sounds like a parent, but that's who I am. I would like to emphasize the issue at hand, which is regarding amplified music. It is not the elimination of all parties, as we all fear. The residents in Ivy have been subjected to booming amplified music that can be heard blocks away. Decibels are higher than 60 decibels, which is the current noise ordinance for Santa Barbara County. These noise reach well beyond the property line. It's excessive, and I understand the frats and sporties want to have unlimited, unrestricted partying. But what the community needs is to put health and safety first. When Deltopia puts a strain on our community resources, it ripples beyond Isla Vista. The costly and excessive emergency demands from the thousands of partygoers, placing a heavy strain not only to Isla Vista, but to other areas of Goleta. Undue admittance to the local hospitals affect their ability to handle the excessive medical emergencies. And also the substantial numbers of emergency calls for firefighters, law enforcement, and apparently the local airports diminishes crucial response time and function. I challenge the Isla Vista community, the CSD, the UCSB students to make better use of the close to $1 million that had previously gone to the cost of hosting Deltopia. One that would actually better serve the needs of this community, especially if you talk about the poor students, those financial need, those who also need more mental support, or whatever, we may be subsidizing some of the high cost of renting in this neighborhood. $1 million per year, and you want to spend it on partying. And you're objecting to a noise ordinance about amplified music. This is not saying you can't have parties. You can have parties in your apartments. Amplify, meaning loud, extreme music. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is EJ Rad. I'm the External Vice President for Local Affairs for Associated Students at UCSB. I was one of the panelists at the Deltopia Town Hall. I'm sure many of you may have come to that just a couple of weeks ago. And so I'm here to reiterate some of those same points that I made there and address some of the points that the lieutenant made. To make it clear, our position in Associated Students is against the proposed noise ordinance. And this is not because we don't acknowledge there are absolutely safety concerns with Deltopia, and there's absolutely things that need to be done to make it safer. We just do not believe the ordinance would be effective, and we believe it would actually be counterproductive to achieving those ends. To address that, we need to look at a very simple phrase, and it's without community buy-in, there won't be community support. The lieutenant brought up a list of all the organizations to which he reached out to about the ordinance, but those were not in the spirit of collaboration. They were more so in the spirit of notification, of letting us know this is something that the sheriff's office intended on pursuing. And it was not something where our opinions, feedback, and suggestions were actually taken into consideration in formulating the ordinance. This is once again made incredibly clear with the fact that it was presented onto the docket for the Board of Supervisors to vote on before IVC Patrol actually knew if IVCSD was going to endorse them or not. So once again, it's this almost performative way of saying like, hey, we want collaboration, but we're going to go through with it regardless of what anyone thinks. And so I'm of the opinion that if we want to make this a safer event, we should learn from the past, like the quote that was on the screen, which is to say in the past when we had Floatopia, they placed an ordinance on that, it simply became Deltopia, and now we have the exact same problem again. We now have two roads to take. Do we try the exact same solution we already tried and have a couple of years from now a new big party event in a completely different time of year, and we're going to try to address it with the same thing, and we're going to have this never-ending cycle of big party ordinance of chaos happening over and over again? Or are we going to come together as community stakeholders and say, we can move towards making it a safer event with more medical resources where it could potentially be sanctioned? There are these other options if we all come together and build something out from the beginning, not just creating an idea, telling everyone you're going to do it and going through with it regardless of their actual input. So that's the Associated Students position. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leanne, and I am the student body president representing our 23,000 undergraduate students. And I'm here today to strongly urge you against endorsing the Sheriff's Office Deltopia ordinance proposal. I'd first like to commend IVCSD for taking it upon themselves to make Deltopia a safer event for all participants and community members through alternative programming and safety stations throughout the past few years. I believe that it is this community work coupled with student-led efforts to increase safety knowledge and information that has begun to make Deltopia a safer event for all. While I acknowledge that there's a lot of room for improvement, I don't believe that this proposal is an effective community safety solution. The students I represent care deeply about this issue, and it's my duty to protect the safety of our students. This ordinance does not prioritize student safety. Rather, it would turn our community into a police state, subjecting our community and our celebrations to the will of police officers. This ordinance would make us susceptible to civil unrest and a Deltopia that we are unprepared for. This ordinance would also put student and community lives at greater risk. So instead, let's continue to invest in these community-based safety initiatives that focus on alternative programming, keeping it local, overdose prevention, and safe partying. As our community services district, I strongly urge you to listen to the voices of the community you serve and represent. And I know you've already been planning the alternative event, which has been like a really great community event these past few years, but let's think about if the IVCSD and UCSB is really prepared to put together an alternative event to the scale that would be necessary to mitigate the outcomes of a noise ordinance. I know our students and I also know event planning, and I don't believe that just a few months is enough time, nor do we have enough money to create a successful event, a successful alternative event. Making Deltopia safer is a real possibility, but not with this blanket noise ordinance that leaves IVCSD and UCSB left to deal with the consequences. So I encourage us all to work together to create a more comprehensive long-term Deltopia plan that prioritizes safety, includes community stakeholders, students, and residents in the solution, and gives time to come up with actually a successful event and implement safety initiatives, working together, bottom up, not top down, to build a safer out of this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Omar. I'm currently a sociology student at UCSB. My studies focuses on interactions within communities and how those policies affect interactions within those communities also. I'm also the police liaison for IVCLA, and I analyzed 12 years of Deltopia data, such as citations, medical calls, and attendance, to evaluate how enforcement impacts community safety. I use per thousand of attendees to get an accurate representation of the data. Raw numbers alone don't tell us whether the event is getting safer or more dangerous, because the size of the crowd fluctuates drastically every year. From 2013 to 2025, medical call rates stayed steady at about 2 to 3 EMP dispatches per 1,000 of attendees. Even in years of heightened enforcement, that number does not decrease. In other words, stricter enforcement has no measurable effect on medical emergencies per 1,000 of attendees. Citations, however, changed dramatically. From 2022, citations averaged to 2 to 5 per 1,000. After the expansion of noise ordinance and party host rules around 2023, I believe, citations spiked to 10, 11 to even 19 per 1,000, which is a 4 to 8-fold increase. And yet, attendance stayed high at 15,000 to 25,000, and medical emergencies rates per 1,000 stayed stable. This matters because higher citation rates increase financial burdens on students without improving outcomes, discourages people from seeking help because they fear being cited, and it strains first responders with issues that could be prevented by community-led initiatives. A 2022 survey done by the EVPLA office regarding the enforcement of the noise ordinance supports this. Of about 170 people surveyed, fewer than 20% said police make them feel safe. 60% do not feel comfortable talking to police, and over half do not feel safe around them. That's alarming in an environment where people are expected to say something if they see something, especially around Deltopia and Halloween. What has improved safety over the years are community-based preventative measures, presence of student safety partners in UCIB, bluff fencing, accessible restrooms, Narcan distribution, and on-site medical tents, which student organizations and community organizations have spearheaded that effort. Thanks to these, there have been 0 fatalities since 2019, even as crowds remain large within the 15,000 range. 12 years of data point to a clear conclusion: if we want safety, we get far greater results by investing in community-driven prevention and infrastructure, not by expanding enforcement. I also would like to add a little more from a student perspective. Students will figure out other ways of partying. I think since they since they expanded the noise ordinance around 2022, I know people who have started partying, who have started drinking as early as 6 a.m. This will just push people.
Your time, please, wrap. That's it. Thank you. Okay. Next, please go
Hi,
ahead.
my name is Anne Reno and I'm a long-term resident. And I can only speak from my personal experience, and it's watching bands of students, young people meandering, seemingly, in some state of intoxication, in groups, going down streets, looking for amplified music so they can find a party. And that's a reality that I see is, without the amplified music, there's not the magnet there, especially for high school students and other younger people to come out here and go to places where they have not been invited, don't know the people, and probably are not in a safe environment. So that's what I've seen.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, who's next? Go ahead.
Hello, board. Thank you, Lieutenant, for your presentation and community members. It is great to be here with you all. It's great to be here in this room with you all, but it is to my great displeasure that I'm here tonight because I feel that for the first time in my life, that my liberties and the liberties of all of my fellow community members are actually under threat. I'm here to encourage the board to unequivocally reject this noise ordinance, or their support for this noise ordinance. While I appreciate that the bare minimum has been done in receiving input from community members, unfortunately, we as community members have no representation in the final decision making. Specifically, IV residents make up a minority of the constituency of one of the 5 supervisors who will be voting on this noise ordinance. So whatever happens with that vote, how can we ensure as community members that our voices are heard in decisions like this being made in the future? And I believe that that is through a centralized government in IV, namely a city. The idea of having a sanctioned, or the lieutenant himself has encouraged a sanctioned event, which I think many of us would be in support of. How do we have that sanctioned event and ensure that year after year it's effective? That is through a centralized government, namely a city. So no matter where you stand on this issue, whether you're in support of or against the noise ordinance, it is a slap in the face of all community members and a stamp on all of our liberties as citizens, in that we do not have representation in this decision until we have centralized government, namely a city here in Isla Vista. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Henry Soria, 38-year resident of Isla Vista. And I'm going to address something that Director Hobart brought up about the Halloween ordinances. I was here in Halloween in '87 when it was out of control, and that happened until about '92. Then '93, Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office under Sheriff Jim Thomas imposed the ordinances that became the zero tolerance enforcement. And those ordinances actually worked to remove the most dangerous element that comes out of Vista, out of towners. I look around me and I see all my friends and neighbors here, and of all ages. And you're not the problem. This ordinance is not about you. It's about people coming into our community and thrashing it. That's what I always keep saying. I said this at the town hall meeting. I'll say it again tonight. It's not about you. It's the out-of-towners. If it wasn't for them, this ordinance wouldn't even be a thought. But unfortunately, we have that problem. So now back to Halloween. What happened was the ordinance did work up until about '96. Then law enforcement started backing off from enforcement in Isla Vista. And '96, '97, '98, everything started, picking back up. But then in 2000, it started, then out-of-towners started to come back in. And then they had to introduce not zero tolerance, but a little bit stronger enforcement again. So it did work for a while. So there's a sinusoidal kind of pattern to it. Now, the one thing I hear is I see the sphere of out-of-town law enforcement showing up. Yeah, okay, they don't know the area. They don't know my neighbors. They don't know my friends. I'm more worried about a bunch of out-of-towners who think that laws and ordinances magically disappear once you get south of El Colegio Road. And that's not the case. The thing is, we all adhere. We have parties every weekend. They're the best parties. You want to know why? No out-of-towners. It's all the locals. It's all my friends. It's all my neighbors. I live on Segovia. I don't live on the West End, by the way. I'm not a West Ender. I live in the heart of it all. I got Zeta Psi right behind me. I got ZVT just across the road. I got all these fraternities around me. They have their parties. They keep it local. And guess what? Their parties go on all the time. Not a problem, not a hitch. It's when the out-of-towners show up. The last time when they had Sunday Fun Day, one of my neighbors got her bike stolen. Luckily, she had an air tag. We retrieved it in San Luis Obispo. Yes, we drove our asses up to San Luis Obispo to retrieve the bike. But the thing is, the people that bring the problems to the area are not my neighbors and friends. They're the out-of-towners. And the thing is, if we make Deltopia a local event, I will support it 1,000%. If it becomes something local, like a festival we're talking about, something sanctioned where we get IVCSD, IVRPD. My wife was on the IVRPD board of directors for 4 years. And she is all for that as well, by the way. She's no longer serving us. She doesn't want to get reelected. But
Thanks, Henry. That is
thank you
kind.
for your time and keep that in mind. It's not you guys, it's the out-of-towners.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Lieutenant, for joining us today, and thank you for the media and everyone online as well. My name is Neo Harder. I am also a senator in the Associated Students. I'm getting ready to graduate this year, so going to be headed off later pretty soon. But while I am here, I figured I would really quickly address this while I have a little bit of time and I can make a little bit of influence with my position. In regards to Deltopia and what my comment is specifically, I'm gonna shift away a little bit from kind of the discourse that we've had today slightly and make my focus more on the alternative. You know, I really think that at the end of the day, the only solution to this is to make this a sanctioned event. I think that most of my colleagues, my peers, and the rest of the community has made a very strong point and basically summarizes what I feel about the ordinance itself. But in all honesty, whether or not this deliberative body passes that or endorses it or not, it's very, very likely that it's going to occur. We're dealing with forces much bigger than we directly have impact on, which again harkens back to Senator Lucan's point about creating a city in IV. But we're dealing with forces that are much more significant than we have the power to even affect, honestly. But what we can do is we can prove ourselves as a potential city and as a group of people that are collective, that we can resolve issues on our own, which means a sanctioned event. I don't personally agree with the noise ordinance at face value for a couple of reasons, but I do think that the spirit of it leading to a sanctioned event is actually correct. Again, I don't agree with the noise ordinance for a couple of face value reasons that I think other people have addressed, but I do think that creating a sanctioned event, creating a safe space for people, and shifting away from the repetitive cycle that EVPLA Rod was able to elucidate a little bit is the move that we need to follow. It's the action that we need to pursue. I think that'll be good for not only safety, but I think it'll also contribute to the grander goals of this community, which is again to create a city in Isla Vista. I think by proving that we can address these issues on our own and by working with the people and with the resources that we have and recognizing where our position is within the grander scheme of things, I think by recognizing all of those things and being humble in the way that we pursue things is the way that we secure for ourselves more respect in the grander community within the community, and the way that we essentially arrive at an intersection of all of the goals that everyone has to create a safer alternative option, to potentially move all of our capacities more towards the city of IV. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Henry. I'm a fourth-year student, and I'm the internal vice president of the Associated Students. I want to begin by echoing the sentiments of both of the last two speakers. Neo, in the sense that I am also against this ordinance, and I would hope the CSD votes not to endorse it. But the spirit of what Henry was saying is, the way I hear it, is that we, as residents of IV, be we long-term or students, have a lot more in common than we think, and have certain common interests in wanting to protect this beautiful part of California. So the board, the way I view it, and many other student leaders do after hearing from our constituents, is that this ordinance is not interchangeable with a sanctioned event, and it's not interchangeable with safety and caring for safety in IV. And this is based not just off of student stubbornness. I think it's basic human psychology that if we feel that this is pursued through a route of excessive enforcement, it will be far less successful than the route of autonomy that the two senators laid out. It's the same kind of idea behind what we would want a city, which includes a local police force that knows this community well, as opposed to something that has been imposed from the outside and we would have to deal with anew. So I'm fully in support of a sanctioned event, and not just as an individual, but as someone in a leadership position in the association. And that matters because Associated Students has always been part of funding such events. And program board has an outsized influence there. And I think this route of not going through the ordinance, but investing together in something that is lasting and does not feel forced on from the outside is something that will work and will again not follow the unsuccessful models we've seen attempted in the past. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers?
So I used my time for questions, so I still have a presentation, 3 minutes, okay?
I will give you a minute and a half, but you used a lot of time on questions, so I gotta be fair
Okay,
to
no
everybody.
problem.
I appreciate.
So minute and a half, from the business perspective, it's gonna kill the businesses. However, forget my presentation. I want you to picture this. What is the problem? Is the problem the noise or the actions of unlawful students? Or out of towners? I've been here 27 years. I agree with what you said. It's the out of towners. Picture this. You get loud music playing in all the roads in IB without a single student on the road. Is that a problem? Suddenly noise is not a problem. Music is not a problem. Now picture this, another scenario. There is no music playing and you've got tons of students on the street, all with headphones, listening to music, not even moving in sync because they're listening to different music. They're drinking, they're drunk, they're having fun. Now what's the problem? The problem is not the sound. The sound is a consequence. It's going to hurt everyone, businesses, people. The culture IB is, IB students leave Berkeley and all the other places. I was just following a car that eventually stopped, Berkeley Dad. And then by chance, he happened to come to the restaurant and said, Berkeley Dad, why don't you send your kid to Berkeley? And he said the eldest one went to Berkeley, the younger one wanted a UCSB experience. We provide an experience too for the students. Now, lastly,
I'm sorry, and unfortunately, your minute and a half is up. If you could wrap up in a sentence.
okay, sure. From the frying pan into the fire, if you move students from here and send them downtown Santa Barbara, you got it. I guys got no idea what happens to kids downtown Santa Barbara. So restricted but controlled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any additional public comment here in the room?
Hi, good evening.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Lieutenant, for your presentation. I'm here to ask you to please endorse this ordinance as it's being proposed. One thing that I did not hear in any of the comments that I heard during the Deltopia town hall and here tonight is how to mitigate the out-of-towners. There's no strategy for stopping out-of-towners from coming here. The other alternative solution would be to create, checkpoints and entrance into IV, and there are problems with that. And Deltopia is not the problem, it's the size of Deltopia. So we're faced with the option of continuing how we are going and changing it. It's not ideal, I understand that. But we are overwhelmed. Our medical staff is overwhelmed, our hospitals are overwhelmed, and the solutions don't seem to be to decrease spending. All the solutions that I hear to increase spending. How about more porta potties? How about more tents for medical support? It's unsustainable and tone deaf, quite frankly, because all of the county pays for this, and we're at a time where we're looking at layoffs and trying to prevent costs from going up. So we have to put it in perspective that it's a one-day party that's costing over $500,000 from the county plus UCSB and all the other costs that are associated with it. Also think about the safety issues for the people in Isla Vista who are not participating in Deltopia. For instance, 2 years ago, I had to take my son out of Isla Vista because it was 8 a.m. There are already arrests for intoxicated people trying to, even early in the morning, try to collapse into our front yard because they're skirting the perimeter where the police are and they're looking for places to throw up or just collapse because they can't stand up anymore. And I was supposed to pick up at a time that was time certain I realized that I was incommunicado because there's no cell phone service. So if you're having an emergency in your house, you can't get a hold of maybe you can text 911. I don't know how that works, but you have to physically find an officer. And so it impacts everybody. This year, I walked through Del Playa from the 66 to the 67 to the end of 65. The entire 66 block, there was not a one officer present, and we were all at a standstill. This was high noon. And if violence broke out or something bad happened, there's no way. We couldn't reach for help. No help could arrive, and it was completely packed. I also dispute the fact that the noise ordinance would not make a difference. It would. Look at Halloween. It's a non-issue anymore in terms of a safety standpoint and medical issues. On Post Point, the weekend before Halloween, which is now effectively the Halloween weekend for everyone who parties here, there were 23 medical calls from 10 p.m. on, and only 3 the weekend of Halloween.
And that is your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please consider that you too have a privilege to be here, that you took an oath of office
Thank you
to
very much. That is
uphold
your
the
time.
mission of the CSD, and please think about public
Thank you very
safety
much.
first. Thank you.
Is there any additional public comment here in the room? I'm not seeing any. Okay, let's go to Zoom. Any public comment on Zoom, Jonathan?
No one's raised, no one's raised their hands, but if anyone wants to speak on Zoom, you can raise your hand. None
Okay.
yet.
Is there any public comment written that requested to be read into the record?
Yeah, we have 3 or 4.
Okay, please proceed with those.
All right. My name is Miranda, and I've had the opportunity and privilege to transition from a UCSB student to a long-term resident of Isla Vista. During my final years as a student, I chose to live on the 6-8 block with friends drawn to the quiet character for which the area has historically been known for. It was not until these most recent years that the magic of the 6-8 block has disappeared under various illegal, overcrowded music events on private property. An influx of parked cars which belong to on-campus and commuter students, and the constant drone of amplified music sounding like you're approaching a Coachella music festival. An unsanctioned event like Deltopia only amplifies the already existing issues that displace students, long-term residents, and negatively impact the local businesses. As a full-time student working 60 hours a week to cover rent and living expenses, I found it especially difficult to navigate Deltopia when returning home after long shifts to find strangers in my yard or even inside my living space. Now, as an adult, I am fortunate to have the option of leaving town during Deltopia weekend. However, many families, faculty, and residents, particularly those living on the Abrego block and in family housing, do not have that privilege. For them, Deltopia represents an intrusion into their daily lives and livelihoods. At the town hall meeting, there was data to support the claim that Deltopia stresses local infrastructure systems like our hospitals, our emergency response teams, and even our local airport. I'm asking the board to consider supporting the noise ordinance amendment and hope that you broaden your scope to include the other minority groups that live in Isla Vista and consider the greater community such as our nurses, EMTs, law enforcement, and other healthcare employees who are disproportionately impacted by the risks associated with an event of this scale. Thank you very much. The next one. Okay, the next one. Dear IVCSD and Ivy Foot Patrol and the public, I'm writing in support of a noise ordinance restriction for the unsanctioned 2026 Deltopia event. Reasons. Number 1, Isla Vista already has more people per square foot than any other place in the United States. During the festival, untold numbers in the thousands come to party in our town. 2, all residents in Isla Vista are faced with gridlock, illegal parking, no cell phone coverage, and other issues that make it difficult for us to be safe. Hospitals are not prepared to receive the influx of patients, and last year all ambulances were busy serving casualties in IV, leaving emergency care outside of IV impossible. 4, putting up more medical tents and adding more law enforcement officers is not the way to go. Our taxes pay for the costs of trying to keep Deltopia safe. 5, I live next to an open space that become toilets for all the people who can't or don't want to stand in line to use a porta potty. This is our environment and our ecosystem is under attack. We can't let this happen repeatedly. 6, we are all experiencing economic pressures and budgets are tight. I would prefer my tax money to be spent on something more constructive that serves the population at large. Please, can we try this arrangement for a year and see how it might evolve differently in the future? Thank you. Kay Miller, Isla Vista resident. Good evening. My name is Anne Marie, and I'm a UCSB student and IB resident. I understand that safety is everyone's top priority, but a 72-hour ban on amplified music is not the right way to achieve it. Deltopia isn't chaos. It's a long-standing Isla Vista tradition that has been successfully managed through collaboration between students, the Ivy Foot Patrol, and the Community Services District. In 2024, Deltopia drew large crowds, yet had no major medical incidents thanks to med tents, Narcan distribution, and student safety volunteers. The higher citation numbers in 2025 came from stricter enforcement, not from a rise in serious harm. The data show that when we work together, harm reduction measures work. A full weekend music ban would only drive gatherings indoors into small, unsafe spaces where medics can't reach people. Instead of prohibition, we should refine what already works. Daytime music hours, decibel limits, and nighttime quiet rules, like the Halloween model that already keeps Ivy safe every fall. And honestly, this reminds me of Footloose, that movie where a town banned dancing to stop trouble. It didn't make people safer. It just pushed their energy underground until they found a compromise that balanced joy and safety. Isla Vista deserves that same balance. We all want fewer medical calls, not fewer songs. Please don't outlaw culture when cooperation can protect it. Work with students to design a proportional, data-driven policy that keeps Isla Vista safe and vibrant. Thank you. Anne Marie, I've got this one. Oh, this one first. It's a little hard to follow. Okay, another one from a property provider. My position on Deltopia: assign occupancy limits for back patios, decks. This is basic, a simple square foot formula. Carl Lindbergh has most of the measurements already. I'm happy to spearhead this with owners. Why it's a good thing and not part of the county, the biased inspection program, the way fire marshal can immediately shut down problem houses, dangerous situations, issue a permit for 1/3 DJ to DJ on Del Playa for 3 hours only. That way everyone is front center, has eyes on them after 3 hours done. You give them enough of a Deltopia to not overdo it. You keep eyes on them. And it becomes collaborative, which is the key to coexistence. Also, way too many police last year. It was ridiculous. All right. My name is Peter Neuschel. I live in IV. I manage property in IV. I attended UCSB. I taught there at one time. I've witnessed every Deltopia. I want to commend Lieutenant Joe Schmidt for finally taking serious steps to end this stupid party that threatens the health of our entire county. One item is missing from his detailed description of the unsanctioned annual riot. That is the embarrassment to UCSB. What sort of world-class university wins awards for best party school? That reputation cheapens everyone's hard-earned degree. UCSB's identification with the stupidity of Deltopia is not something one wants to discuss when interviewing for a job. Serious students, the kind world-class universities actually recruit, are never going to attend UC Deltopia. UCSB has a new chancellor, presumably one who supports Lieutenant Schmidt's plan. Tonight, one would expect UCSB's paid-for CSD director and the county's appointed CSD director to support Lieutenant Schmidt's plan. CSD student and grad student directors who decide to sign on the dotted line supporting stupid, good luck at that job interview. In that, I would include AS reps elected by barely 20% of the student body. The BOS, Board of Supervisors, majority is going to back Lieutenant Schmidt. That's a no-brainer. One would expect the CSD board to do the same.
And we do have one new hand on Zoom.
Okay.
Sarah Erickson.
Sarah, please feel free to go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, see me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. I'm Sarah Erickson, and I live on the 68 block. I moved here in 1986 with my family, was raised here with my brothers. I'm here with my dad, Ron Erickson, and Dinah Fisher, and we know a lot of the long-term permanent residents that so many kids and families and professors, and we watch the students come and go. They're here for 4 years. They come, they go, they come, they go, they come, they go, and we're still here. I support this ordinance. So does Ron and Dinah and the overwhelming majority of every long-term permanent resident that I know. I think it will be effective. There may need to be some tweaks. I don't think that there's any time to spare to this idea that, you know, I'm hearing from a lot of the students and the AS electeds that they weren't consulted. I too was not consulted. There were a lot of people, we weren't consulted. With a situation like this is public safety. This is $1 million being spent. This is ambulances that are tapped out Saturday by 9 a.m. This is not, I thank Lieutenant Schmidt for your leadership, for taking action. And I think it needs to be passed. And I believe that there's 10 million in the associated student budget. The most well-funded student government in the nation has 10 million that goes unused every year. There's time to create an alternative, and this idea that there's some, like, if you pass the ordinance, something bad's going to happen. I'm not buying into that. I think it's going to be safer, and there may need to be some tweaks, and there should be, it'll definitely put a fire under folks to start getting the steps in place to get a sanctioned legal event in place. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else online, Jonathan?
No other hands are up.
Okay. So with that, then, any other public comment in the room? Okay, I do have one more. Please go
Is it
ahead.
okay if I take it from here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lily Mejia. I am a fourth-year political science major at UCSB, and I am the local affairs co-chair for UCSB's lobby corps through associated students. It has been repeatedly stated that out-of-towners are the reason for this ordinance, yet punitive measures are being put on those who live here. When we cannot receive a guarantee that smaller local parties or pre-games where music might happen to be heard from the streets will not be penalized, this does not provide safer parties, but lack thereof. Additionally, when a sanctioned event is not stipulated within the ordinance, we have no guarantee that an alternative event will be approved. As for the comments about Halloween, it has been made a safer event. It has not been made a safer event, but a non-event, pushed to a non-Halloween weekend. Instead, students are pushed to different schools, essentially outsourcing the problem rather than combating it. With the undoubted changes made last minute for a new Halloween, if this ordinance is to be put in place, we will not have sufficient time to prepare medical staff and UCIV for Narcan, fentanyl strips, fentanyl testing strips, water, and etc., making the changes even more dangerous. I ask the board to vote against the noise ordinance, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm not seeing.
Sorry, I have one more thing.
Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm a fourth-year sociology student, and all I wanted to say is that this ordinance seems like it will be ineffective because, like the data suggests, it took 21 years for the Halloween ordinance to actually reduce crowd size until 2014. But in 2014, there were a few tragedies that are probably the main cause. We should look for the more effective solutions that actually make it safe and local. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piggy. Okay, I think I see a hand online. Please go ahead.
You're muted, Piggy. I'll try to unmute you from here.
There we go. Things we agree on. We need to make this safer for our community members. So we somehow need to deter the out-of-town crowds, and we need to change the culture. I've been watching since 1982. I watched Halloween go from something kind of fun into something insane, and it took so many years to change that. I have watched Flotopia be something fun into something that was so dangerous, and now Deltopia is there. We got a reprieve after the horrible things that happened in 2014 because everyone came together and was like, we can't let this happen again. And then we got an reprieve again during COVID. But it is not stopping and it is growing. And I'm out there every year. John is out there every year. Our neighbors are out there every year. We're watching. And what could be a fun thing between neighbors is not that anymore. And so many heinous things happen that weekend. And so many go unreported. How do we change this? An off-campus event would be awesome. And that should happen, and I hope it happens. It's not going to happen this year. But can we take changes now, incremental changes that start to change this. We can. And I support this ordinance. It took a really long time for Halloween, but I was there from the beginning to the end, and it did make a difference. Will this happen overnight? No, it won't. Because in the end, keeping it local is the real thing, and ultimately that is up to the community. So the community needs to figure out ways. How do we make this about what's special about Isla Vista? What we can do with our neighbors? And when we make something that is attractive to so many people that have no connection to this place and no love for this place and no respect for this place, something's got to change. And I think this is a step in the right direction. So I thank the neighbors. I thank you guys. This is hard. Been there, done that. But this is a step in the right direction. And thank you to Foot Patrol. Thank you to CSD. And thank you for all of you who came out to speak.
Thank you very much, Begin. Okay. I think I'm not seeing any other public comment, so I'm going to close public comment, or maybe
I'm so sorry.
Okay. You're going to be the last one. I am closing public comment after. Go ahead.
I'll just sit and make this quick. I just want to note how IV Foot Patrol has also been complicit in all of the partying that has been going on. I think that there was one statement that he said where there has been urination and defecation on the streets of IV, but when IV Foot Patrol brought horses last year, there were several complaints where the horses had defecated in the streets and the officers refused to pick it up from the streets and just left it there for several days. Getting rid of restorative justice also does not keep it local if you're punishing the students that are in here that have nowhere else to go. And also in one of the previous board meetings, it was said that there were 300 officers in IV during Deltopia compared to 65 medical personnel in IV. I think if there's a focus on this being a medical emergency, there should be more of a prioritization on medical personnel rather on increasing the amount of officers and the amount of law enforcement that is in our community. I know that there's been a lot of sentiments tonight, especially from people who do live here that aren't just college students, especially because I know that we're only here for 4 years. But this isn't about us partying. This is about having more law enforcement in our communities when it is not needed.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, with that, I'm going to bring it back to the board and we will go into deliberation. Does anyone want to tee off? $1 million question, right?
Well, I will.
Go ahead, Director Thompson.
I am very moved by the problem that we have here and everyone's concern about it and just the magnitude of it. And they're very, very legitimate concerns. However, I really don't see how this noise ordinance is the solution to the problem. And I feel concerned because there's no clear permit way around it. So what we've been trying to build very arduously for a long time could very well hit these roadblocks. I feel concerned that the business owners can't have a reasonable amount of fun at their establishments, because I do think part of the culture that we should be trying to change is to make downtown Isla Vista a party center. So that worries me. The fact that 3 people listening to an iPhone on their front lawn could be a violation that would be up to an officer's discretion whether or not they enforced it. That bothers me. So I as much as I think we need to do something, I just don't feel convinced that doing this is going to do what we want it to do. And I really like the idea of having people get IDs and, you know, do enforcement at the borders. And I know I've heard there's problems with that, but my gosh, when we've had our fires and floods, nobody but residents can go into those areas. So I know there's ways to be restrictive when there's some kind of a problem or emergency. So to me, if what we want to do is keep out of towners out, that it just seems like there's more intelligent ways to do it that are more direct.
Yeah.
So that's what.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'd really like to second everything you said. I mean, it's clear as day that business as usual cannot go on. You know, there is medical emergencies, there's environmental emergencies, right? There's even, some years there have been deaths, even multiple deaths. All of that is, a tragedy. Clearly, this has to change. But I'm also not convinced that this ordinance is the right solution. I mean, I appreciate that a solution has been put forth, and I appreciate all the community conversation that has since then, but I think we can do better. I think that as a community, and a whole community, students long-term alike, and when I say students, I don't just mean UCSB, I've got more neighbors who attend Ivy Elementary than attend UCSB. And I think about them all the time too, because they're usually, banging on my door, because that's what 4-year-olds do. Anyways, but I believe that our entire community can come together and really feel united and not have this divide between us, and work towards something that addresses, keeping out of towners in check, that addresses respecting the culture of the community and the physical community, and that addresses true public safety, where, hospitals are not overwhelmed by this event, where Goleta, the airport, all of this is not overwhelmed by this event. Maybe it can become something lovely, like, Solstice downtown. But yeah, kind of echoing what Carrie was saying, that yes, something needs to change, but I don't believe this is a solution. And I think that our community coming together, truly working together, we can create something better.
Thank you for those comments.
Okay, go next.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank Lieutenant Schmidt for your efforts at reaching out with the multitude of IB stakeholders. I appreciate the opportunities I personally had to meet with you and discuss your position. I also want to thank the Isla Vista Foot Patrol for the work they do daily to make Isla Vista a safe environment for us students and residents. I also want to acknowledge the dangers of Deltopia. While it may be a fun day for students, it has significant negative impacts on not only the long-term residents of Isla Vista, but on residents across the county. The ambulance shortage in particular is a major cause of concern for me, with the results of Deltopia impacting an entire county's ability to access potentially life-saving care. However, with all of this in mind, I will still not be voting to endorse this ordinance today. I believe that police enforcement without sufficient alternatives does not guarantee success. The 1993 Halloween ordinance is evidence of this, with it not achieving lasting results until 2 decades later in 2014. San Luis Obispo has dealt with a similar event with their St. Fratty's Day. However, their university stepped up and organized a concert on the same day that by all accounts was massively successful in drawing students away from dangerous house parties. The blueprint for how to best address the dangers of Deltopia exists in SLO. It is proven to work. Unfortunately, it is not currently being emulated in Isla Vista. I worry that without an alternative event, we will see years of back and forth between police and students spending excessive public funds without achieving significant long-term results. I acknowledge that the burden of hosting an alternative event is not on the sheriff's office. However, I do believe that considerations on a potential ordinance should have been started in conjunction with conversations on hosting an alternative event. I recognize that these concerns were quickly brought up and taken into consideration as a direct result of Lieutenant Schmidt's outreach efforts. However, unlike the ordinance, there has so far been no guarantee of a sufficiently funded and permitted alternative event. Under different circumstances, I could support an alternative version of the ordinance, an ordinance that more clearly clarifies which noise violations are subject to ticketing, alongside guaranteed warnings for noise violations. But even more importantly, an ordinance that's passing is conditioned on a sufficiently funded and sanctioned alternative event. I recognize that this vote today may have little impact on whether the county passes their ordinance. However, I hope that today's meeting can draw attention to the immediate need to support the Isla Vista CSD's efforts to host a sanctioned community organized event that will be essential to keep students safe next year. I strongly believe that a successful permanent event is very much possible, and I urge our community stakeholders, including associated students, the university, and local businesses to step up and throw their weight and support behind this effort to ensure not only student and resident safety, but also to save the music on Deltopia and ensure students can have fun in a safe environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Block.
I don't want to repeat too much of what's already been said. I appreciate the conversations that we've had so far about this. I think that there's a lot of concerns that I hope can be considered in future actions by the police. I know that there's a lot of mystery around what the police are here for and about the actions that they're taking, and I recognize that you guys do a lot of great in the community.
I don't think that this ordinance is positive. I don't think that it takes into account community needs. I don't think that it's clear enough in what is going to be policed and what's not. And I think that while the collaboration has began now, I think that it's a little too late. I don't think that we have the time to put on the kind of event that our community deserves. And I think that there hasn't been enough communication from the university. I've seen a lot of AS senators come and speak and represent the students, but the university itself, I haven't heard really anything from. And I think that without that larger support from both the county, the university, the city of Goleta, these areas that are being impacted by this event, I don't see how we could support an ordinance without their support in doing something larger for the community. And I think that at the end of the day, Isla Vista doesn't need more police. So.
Thank you for your comments. Director Sipos, do we have you online?
Yes, hi. Yeah, I basically was gonna say exactly what Edward and Kylan said, but not as eloquently, so I'll leave it to that. But I think it's really hard to justify Deltopia with all the like budget cuts that are going on with the county and like the threat of people being unemployed. But if the money is still gonna be spent on the police at the same force, like what's the point? You know what I mean? And I would really much support I also think that the ordinance like goes against the spirit of Deltopia or the spirit of Isla Vista, and like maybe it's bad to like associate Isla Vista and partying, but it is like historically like part of the culture, and I think that's in some ways beautiful. So that kind of sucks. I don't know, but I agree with the sentiments expressed. Like if we walk a very dangerous line by if this gets passed and then we fail in providing an alternative event, like some things that could happen could be very dangerous. And I don't know how we would go around that. And yeah, there's a very dangerous line we're walking right now. So yeah.
Thank you for your comments, Director Sipos. And I'll be the caboose on the train. I really appreciate hearing all of my colleagues' perspectives on this. I appreciate hearing from the public. I think that our democracy is strongest when we all show up and work together and share each other's perspectives. And so I want to thank everyone that showed up both tonight, and I want to thank EJ as well as Lieutenant Schmidt for organizing the town hall, where we also got to hear a number of perspectives from the community on this subject. And I regret the direction this is headed because I don't think that we're really having the right conversation about the core issue that exists with Deltopia through considering this. I did take time to watch the Footloose movie during Thanksgiving, partially at the urging of our public commenter, and because I want to see if it actually fits into our situation. And so for those that haven't seen the movie, in Footloose, a town bans dancing, and it was meant to address a real issue. There had been someone that died in a drunk driving accident. They were also trying to solve issues that they believed were bad for the community, not just drunk driving, but also premarital sex and other behavior of high school students. But the approach didn't work. The high school students still found a way to have their dance. They had it outside of town, outside of the city limits. And, in thinking about how that impacts us, I think it's really informative that there's only so much that you can do with legislation. Legislation and words on a paper are important. It is the law. We are a country of laws. But at the same time, law depends on enforcement, and it depends on community buy-in for it to be effectuated. We all agree that Deltopia as is on an unsustainable course. 76 hospital transports. There would have been so many more if we hadn't invested in the Good Samaritan services at the community center, the triage center. No one knows better than our board and our staff, who have dealt with this issue longer than anyone else in the public sector at this point, that there are massive problems. And we see it because we approve the budget and expend the money to try to mitigate the challenges, safety and public health wise. Not all, but a significant portion. And this ordinance today, the discussion we're having is about noise. We're not talking about that sort of behavior. I agree with those that have pointed out that this same ordinance was adopted in the 90s and it didn't make a material difference for a really long time. And that is something that I still have not heard been addressed. What I wish that we had spent the last couple of months talking about is what changes to the law and funding is necessary for us to get the organized event permitted. Because while I hear a lot of great will, and I really appreciate your leadership on this, Lieutenant Schmidt, because it was not that long ago that we did not have enthusiastic response from law enforcement about a permitted event. And you've really shifted that. But at the same time, there are a lot of things that are out of our control when it comes to permitted festival. On the one hand, the county's permit process needs to have us go to the Board of Supervisors. It's a very discretionary process. This process has caused problems for very large festival operators in our county that have left Santa Barbara County and even gone out of business because they could not navigate this process. This is not something that we had to navigate last year when the ordinance was 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. It is something that we will navigate under this ordinance. And I have a lot of heartburn about our ability to do that, even with an incredible team that I know is going to work their butts off to try to do what is necessary. Also in the law, there is basically what I read, and I still haven't gotten a clear answer, but a prohibition on a beer garden for 21 and over attendees. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing that a reasonable person can say. It is maybe a bit overkill. And we've heard tonight that the ordinance can't be tweaked at this point. It's moving forward. And so I appreciate that there's nothing that you can do about it at this point, but I really would have needed to see those amendments in there, I think, to support this. You know, I want to thank our team too, because they did something really significant in partnership with Associated Students, which was secure the commitment from Associated Students to fund an alternative event and to pledge $150,000. That is significant. And it is such a testament to the fact that I believe students in the student body are operating in goodwill and wanting to see a safer and more organized and permitted event. That's never happened in the past. And in fact, I will be honest that I have gone to present in the past to certain student groups and gotten laughed out of the room when I talked about how we needed a permitted festival. Things are different with this generation. They really want to collaborate and find a solution. And I think that is to be commended. But the reality is that we need a much larger scale of funding to be able to pull this off. And, you know, it's hard not to look at the amount of money that we have spent just on overtime costs alone and not see a potential funding source if there was the will. So I appreciate that there have been a lot of community dialogue. I delayed this meeting from the 18th on the hopes that there would be more dialogue and that there would be some sort of compromise fashion, maybe a la the movie Footloose, where they were able to get people together and find a compromise. And that's not where we're at today. I think that it could still be where we're at in the future, but we're not there now. And so, you know, it's for those reasons that I'm not prepared to support this today. I do want to say something just about the planning process in general. Other communities have similar challenges that we have with Deltopia. We are not like an anomaly. In fact, just an hour and a half to our north in the city of San Luis Obispo, they've gone through this with the St. Patrick's Day festivities and the concert that they were able to put together on campus, which also did come with greater restrictions and fines for parties in the residential neighborhoods. That was a compromise that the student body and the Associated Students leadership and IFC and Pan-Hellenic and the city and the university all came together and supported. And so I have no reason to believe that we can't figure out how to get there here, but we're just not there. And the big reason why is that we don't have a clear pathway for this organized festival as it stands. I think that what is really missing from this conversation is executive leadership That's what the city of San Luis Obispo has, but we do not. We do not have a centralized city manager or authority. We have the county executive office, who used to be more involved in coordinating Deltopia. And I'm not quite sure why they have stepped back in recent years, but they no longer are as involved in this coordination. And I think that is one of the reasons why we're here today, having to make a decision on something that is not ready to come out of the oven yet, not all the way baked. So I think I'll end my comments there and say that, maybe we should all get together and watch Footloose, because I do think that there is something to be said there about recognizing the limits of our power and authority, and also recognizing that we all want the same thing, which is a safe community where there are no public health medical issues, or I won't say no, because there will never be no, where there are greatly reduced public health and medical issues, and where folks that live in residential areas can enjoy the right to peace in their home, but we can also still allow for something fun to exist in the commercial area that doesn't put our local businesses out. So with that, I think I'm ready. If anyone else has any last parting comments that they want to make, I think that we have a consensus on the board, and I'd like to hear someone make it into a motion. Anyone want to stab at it? I think the motion. Oh, go ahead.
Move for a motion to vote on our stance on the noise ordinance.
Okay, and the stance would be
that we are against it. Don't we need
Okay.
to do a roll call vote though?
We will, but we're just making the motion. So, okay, there's a motion. Sebos, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Carmichael. Any last comments from the board before we go to a vote? Okay, Jonathan, can you do roll call?
I think you need to ask for public comment on the motion.
We did public comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Carmichael?
I'm sorry, we're not yes to the ordinance, yes to the.
Yes to the motion.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Hobart?
Yes.
Palat?
Yes.
Sebos?
Yes.
Cobbler?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Our next meeting of the board of directors will take place tomorrow, right back here in this room at 6 p.m. and on Zoom. And with that, thank you all so much for being here tonight. Our meeting is adjourned.